I figured I'd, try my hand at just using a Photoshop blank canvas and like my drawing tablet and building a entire well, I shouldn't say building an entire, but building the first parts of a new fantasy world for either a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, maybe like a standalone novel, or just because you want to do that, which is my reason. So I figured I'd start. So the first thing I gotta get down is that there's two types of world building. There's outside in, which is building the whole world and then going into the specifics, and then there's inside out, which is starting at one character and then using that to build the whole world. And I'm probably gonna be not doing outside in because that just takes a very long time. I'm probably just gonna be going from one character to another. Well, not even one character. I'm gonna go a little bit more up the tiers and go for a an all around genre. Maybe I'll do it. I think I'll do. There's three options here. There's a high fantasy option, which is pretty good. I mean, it's all up to opinion, but high fantasy is fun. It's like elves and orcs and all kinds of junk like that. There's I'm not sure if this is real, but I feel as though there is a middle fantasy where you've got like a retraction, kind of like a not a resurgence, but a it's sort of like Game of Thrones almost, I would say, because Game of Thrones has a lot of well, actually, Game of Thrones is the other way around. It's got people and magic emerging, like coming up, like it's low fantasies like Kingdom Come Deliverance, because it's there's no real the things didn't happen, so it's technically a fantasy, but it's really not, because it's basically just a history rewrite, which is it's still world building, but not really. It's more like, I don't know. I just don't really like it. It's too normal. It feels like middle fantasy and high fantasy. It's building your world. It's creating something new, but low fantasy is just changing something. So we're probably not gonna do low fantasy. I don't like it, but personal choice. Probably going for high fantasy, just because I want my elves, I want my dwarves, I want my orcs and such. But there's different kinds of high fantasy for me. There's like a steampunk option. I don't know. That's a possibility. There's kind of like a, I don't even know how to explain this one. Kind of like a more spiritually magical, kind of like a Lord of the Rings. And then I guess there's sort of a really dark, like a Warhammer almost. Because Warhammer's really dark, just in general. It's some dark stuff in there. I don't know. I guess you could stick in Steampunk and Warhammer, but I'm not really sure about that. I'm not gonna call it Warhammer, of course. It's a whole different genre, but I don't really know what to call it, because I'm not an expert in this whole world building thing. I'm just interested in the whole topic. So for Steampunk, I'm gonna say that it's definitely an option, and it's always a fun option, because you get to get a lot more of the modern. It's more modern, because there's a lot of things that are a lot more easily understood about like a steampunk, 1800s, 1850s, I'd say, because that's actual history that's written in. But Lord of the Rings, like a Lord of the Rings genre, like a high elven high fantasy almost, it's a lot harder, because you have to make your own things compared to what you could just slip in there about steampunk or even Warhammer, because Warhammer is basically medieval fantasy mixed in with like a high elven, but then Warhammer has its own distinct, darkness about it, between the, the chaos gods and the orcish hordite, I suppose, and probably like a mix between these two is what I would build for my world. Now this is only like a planning stage, honestly. I'll probably start making images and 3D models even about possibilities about the actual world. But this is just a you know, planning video that'll probably upload, not even that too much edited, because it's really, I don't really need to edit it too much because it's, you know, it's so basic of a concept. Um, so if you take the best of steampunk and the best of this Lord of the Rings genre, I don't want to call it just Lord of the Rings because I'm going to call it just a Lord of the Rings genre. If you take the best of both worlds, you'd get something along the lines of, well, if you take the best out of steampunk, you would get something like, what is it called? Frostpunk, I'm pretty sure. I think it's called Frostpunk. Which, it's like a ice game, kind of, you know, it's like a steampunk, but with a, you know, frost. But if you take this high elven and the steampunk, you basically get the Warhammer genre, but then the Warhammer adds that, you know, darkness, gore, edgy. It's really edgy. So for this we would have something along the lines of, you know, not dark. I'm trying to think of, you know, what is just like what I want, but not really what I want. You know, I like if you wanted to make a high fantasy, you would say I want Lord of the Rings, but different in my own way. So just like maybe I'll take out the orcs, or I'll make a whole new Dark Lord. This whole steampunk thing, I'm thinking something along the lines of oh, I'm so dumb. World of Warcraft. With the dwarves and the gnomes. I mean, the dwarves and the gnomes are really steampunk, but World of Warcraft on its own is a steampunk high fantasy thing, because you've got your you know, your thunder sticks or boom sticks. I always forget. I didn't really play World of Warcraft, the actual video game, too much, but I really like the environment of it. The game was just you know, just took too long for me. But yeah, no, definitely gotta do something along the lines of you know, World of Warcraft world. Wrathful Lich King. There was a, you know, an overwhelming there was like a looming darkness. Was of course the actual Lich King and the, you know, the storyline. I do know the storyline and the lore pretty well from that. No, yeah, like a looming darkness of you know, the Lich King and such. But if you took up like the Lich King, the Frost parts, the you know, the Undying Death Knights, things like that, you know, you just change things, but of course with definitely your own touches. You can't just, like, you know, blatantly steal something and just change little things about it. I mean, that's basically just illegal. But every world has its own, you know, inspiration. And if I wanted to take inspiration from World of Warcraft, it would be something along the lines of, you know, one. If we're taking bits from, you know, World of Warcraft and even bits from Warhammer, we could have the lines of a big empire, you know, like the Empire of Man, or Alliance, and then kind of a versus another big empire. But instead of it being on equal terms, I would like mine to be on equal terms. So definitely these guys kind of being the not the losers, I should say, but they're kind of on their last legs, but not really. But then of course you've got you know, like satellites, such as, you know, in Warhammer it would be the Kislevites, like from Kislev, or however you say it, and you know, satellites from this, and naturally these would have more satellites, satellite nations, I should say, sort of like you know, how the USSR had Ukraine, and you know, those I'm not really sure about you know, the 1990s. I'm more World War II, pre-industrial revolution, and World War II. I would not say World War II is pre-industrial. These you know, these satellite states would definitely make the change in the war. Plus a you know, separate alliances with their own separate conflicts. You know, smaller states that technically would be allied with each other, but you know, they're not really. Yeah, you know what's really up. It's like, such as in the Warhammer series, there would be the dwarves and the greenskins, where this would be the Empire and Chaos. Something like that, but you know, definitely with a little bit more complexity, plus sort of I was thinking something more like Dragon Age also, where there was a, you know, like a really big problem in the background that you really want to solve, but it can't be solved until other things happen. You know, this conflict has to end before, you know, everyone can go towards, you know, the this looming darkness, which I would say is you know, the standard, like, Dark Lord, maybe like an evil wizard or something like that, who's raising his army, Whereas this would might have to, instead of just like a green skin thing, it would be more like a one man empire versus another human empire with you know, one human empire being supported by elves, another by dwarves, and then like a necromancer king in the background waiting to, you know, attack everyone else when they're at their weakness. I think that would be a pretty good you know, basic plot for something like that. And then once we have a plot, I know that I said I was going from an inside in, but once we had a plot, we could probably move into geography and history, because geography is directly into history, of course. But I think for now now that we just, you know, have a basic plot going on, it'll probably be, you know, a-okay for this you know, first video. I'll put some you know, links to my Discord in the description, and I do hope if you're watching, you give a like, maybe even subscribe. For now, that'll be all in our you know, first part of our new world building series that I don't really have much planned for, but you know, I figured I'd try out anyways. Maybe it'll help further campaigns and stuff like that, and eventually you know, everything will get more professional as it goes on. Especially once I get more used to this new drawing tablet that I have. That's why a majority of this is just really, really horrible drawing. I just really do have to get used to this. But I hope you didn't, you know, find it too cringy for me to, you know, be drawing on basically a whiteboard for the past, oh, I don't even know how long.